So, James, do you know why I'm here? James, we need to talk. An intervention, if you will. I feel like I'm the right person to do this because I actually walked past you on the street in LA on my 18th birthday when you were filming for the first episode of your new show. And none of the Americans at that point knew who you were, James. No one recognised you, but I knew who you were. I recognised you. I mean, if I'd known then, what would become of you? I could have done something. Maybe I could have thrown myself in front of the camera and cried, "No, James, no! Don't do it, James! Don't do it, please! Don't do this to us! Don't do this to England! Don't embarrass us on the international stage, James!" Who could have known what would happen? But if I had, and I've carried the guilt of that for quite a long time. I saw you at the beginning of this dark and destructive road you went down, and I failed to get through to you then. But maybe, just maybe, because of that, I'm the person who can get through to you now. So, James, let's get started. I've got a list here, quite a long list really, James, of several issues I've had with your behaviour recently. You know, we've tried, haven't we? We've tried several approaches. We tried the tiptoeing around your feelings approach, and that didn't really work, did it? I mean, I feel like, if I'm being honest, James, that I went kind of easy on you for your involvement in completely fucking up Beatrix Potter's legacy with the abominations that you call the Peter Rabbit movies. But, you know, clearly the gentle approach hasn't worked. You've continued down this self-destructive path. The fact is, it's not just hurting you, it's hurting the people around you. No more enabling or ignoring your behaviour. Let's be honest with each other, James, and just admit that you need some serious help. So to the rest of the audience, hello, I'm Galatea. This mess was too much even for Acis, so he's taking a little break for the moment for his mental health. You know, but I'm here because James Corden is a national embarrassment and it's gone on long enough. I'm guessing you'll all have heard about the new Cinderella movie because Amazon's been promoting it like crazy. And though this is what finally prompted me to make this video, it's only the most recent in a long line of terrible decisions that James Corden has made. Now, at this moment, some of you might be thinking, "Oh, Galatea, I know James Corden played a minor yet unbearable role in this movie, but surely it's not fair to blame him for the whole thing when he was such a tiny, though admittedly obnoxious, part of it." Fun fact, this whole thing was his idea, yes. And he's also the co-producer of the movie, a fact he conveniently didn't mention when he interviewed Camila Cabello about the movie and went on about how fabulous it all was.
I'm lucky enough, I've seen Cinderella, I've seen the movie, and I've told you this personally, I'll tell you this openly now, you are so brilliant in this film.
According to the writer and director of the movie, James Corden approached her and said, and I'm probably paraphrasing here, "Hey, I've got a totally original and not at all wank idea. Why don't we make a new Cinderella musical? And I know that's been done before, but hear me out. Here's a revolutionary concept. Why don't we have all the characters sing really awkward and uncomfortable covers of modern pop songs?"
Always do what you decide. Don't let them control your life, that's just how I feel.
If we distract pre-teens with music that they recognise and put their favourite singer who can't act in the lead role, then maybe they won't notice how shit the movie is. And so that's exactly what they did. First thing on my list, I just want to ask you, what prompted you to wake up one day and think, what the world really needs is another Cinderella movie? When that thought occurred to you, did you at any point stop to question whether or not you had a brain parasite currently chewing its way through your prefrontal cortex? Because honestly, I think if I ever had an idea as asinine as that, that would be my immediate assumption. Help me understand and ensure there's not a miscommunication here. It could be my mistake. I might have fallen into a parallel universe where we don't have literally hundreds of different versions of Cinderella or Cinderella-like stories, ranging from classic to modern
to historical
to dark to heartwarming to unique. Literally movies that have already done everything your movie does, James, but a lot better. The most recent of which being the 2015 version of Cinderella starring Lily James, which was actually pretty good and just makes your remake look even worse and more unnecessary by comparison. There are so many different Cinderella movies at this point that unless you've got a really killer idea for a remake that's just so unique and has to be told, don't do it. There are other stories, you know. Does James know this? Does he know this? Right, there are even other fairy tale princess stories. Someone email James and let him know about the other stories that in the world that exist. Here's my new rule, so everyone listen, all of you, James and the rest of you, listen up. If it's not a Cinderella remake based on the original, where the bones of her dead mother grant her wishes, and her evil stepmother has to dance in red hot shoes until she drops dead, then we've seen it 100 times before.
Just a quick public service announcement. It's actually the original version of Snow White where the evil stepmother has to dance in red hot shoes. My mistake, I got my fairy tales mixed up. The original version of Cinderella has the stepsisters cutting off bits of their feet to try and squeeze them into those tiny little glass slippers, which also, you know, point still stands.
We don't need another Cinderella movie for at least another 20 years. If then. The question everyone's dying to know the answer to, of course, is did James Corden change the story enough to warrant another remake so soon? And the answer to that is obviously no. So James Corden's version of Cinderella follows the same basic plot, except some of the things James did that he thinks are super revolutionary was to give Cinderella the dream of owning her own fashion business, which was a bold choice, honestly, considering how shit the costume design was. Make the evil stepmother actually not evil anymore, but a misunderstood victim of the patriarchy, thereby depriving the movie of an actual villain. Thank you, James. And 3, also give the prince a precocious sister who is portrayed as being a way better choice to inherit the throne than he is. In other words, with those 3 things, it's Cinderella, except with the laziest, cringiest, most ham-fisted and patronising feminist messaging imaginable.
I don't want a life stuck waving from a royal box any more than a life confined to a basement. I have dreams that I have to chase.
Honestly, as a female watching this, you should feel insulted, or at least I felt insulted. It was just so bloody insincere and felt so cynical and gross and like humouring, the way you'd humour a 3-year-old or something.
Us ladies give birth. We run households. Surely we can run a business.
Girls can do things too. Did you know that? Thank you, James. I didn't fucking know that. So, my lovely audience, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm starting to build up a real dislike of James Corden. I think we've moved beyond irritation at this point. Watch my video on how he destroyed Beatrix Potter, her legacy and her stories, for a more in-depth explanation when my resentment towards James Corden began. But yeah, my point is he seems to eradicate any bit of charm or subtlety for any project that he's involved in. And I mean that sincerely from the bottom of my heart. This should be the litmus test. Anyone working in the film industry, TV industry. If James Corden is in your movie, give up now, unless you want him to stampede all over your project with his usual crudity, artlessness, and utter lack of charm. If you think I'm being mean so far, you haven't heard anything yet. I know I'm being brutal, but this really got under my skin, and honestly, I think at this point, James really deserves the criticism. Why does he take beautiful original stories that aren't his and just vandalise them? You know? It's like watching a tramp piss in the Sistine Chapel. So, let's start with James's performance in this film, because he also gave himself a part in it, because of course he did. He'd probably go into a severe state of shock if people weren't paying attention to him for more than 5 minutes. He plays one of the mice that transforms into a human, you know, that's a footman for Cinderella's carriage. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that I've never seen someone with such a comparatively small part taint the entirety of the movie. You know when you're watching a school play and there's that one really loud, confident, yet incredibly untalented child who tries to make every scene about them, tries so hard to be funny when they're actually just saying painfully awkward things in an incredibly loud voice, and also overplaying every joke until any potential humour that could have existed in it is sucked out of it completely. That's what it's like. That's what it's like watching James Corden anytime he comes on screen in pretty much everything I've seen him in.
Be what you can truly be, not you but me.
I would describe his performance in Cinderella, if I had to sum it up, as toe-curling, obnoxious, and all about him.
I was singing! Why don't you pay attention? Because I was singing!
Everything he does nowadays just seems so self-indulgent to the point where it doesn't matter if the final product is shit as long as everyone's looking at James. It's like watching a 10-year-old with behavioural issues. He did it with Peter Rabbit and Forever Tainted, a beloved children's character, and from what I heard, he also did it with Cats, though I don't hate myself quite enough to actually watch that movie. I don't know if you're now starting to put the puzzle pieces together like I am, but I really think in the last few minutes we've had our first breakthrough. I really think we have. This is fantastic. This is good news. This is good news, James. James, come on now. Peter Rabbit, Cats, now Cinderella. Is this a fetish, James? Is it? This would all make so much sense, James, if it was a fetish, you know? Are you making us all participate in your fantasy of being a small furry animal? And is that why the movies are so bad? Because they don't actually exist as entertainment, but exist only to facilitate your desires.
Let's get loud.
There's no judgment here. That's a lie, there's a lot of judgment. Regardless, James, you can tell me if that's what's really going on. So we can put a stop to whatever the hell this is and all just move on with our lives. I'd love that. I promised myself when I began this video that I would remain professional. But it's hard sometimes to say professional. I hate that it's come to this, James, but you've changed. You really have. Things aren't how they used to be. Can't you see that?
Do you know what you need to do? No. Get over it.
So to the wider audience out there, this may come as a shock to you all, but James Corden actually used to be pretty funny. Or at least there was a time when it wasn't completely unbearable to watch him on TV. So a lot of people enjoyed him on Gavin and Stacey. I admit I was never a huge fan of Gavin and Stacey. I've seen the odd episode, it was fine, it seems fine. But you know, he was fine, seems to be fine to watch on that. But I did, however, enjoy him. I thought he was pretty funny on a few panel shows that he did. And he did some amusing charity skits as well with the England football team back in the day. And I was thinking about this because I went back and watched some of his old clips from when he was actually funny. And I think, from comparing him from how he was then and how he is now, I think he's lost that irreverence that he had. I think that's what makes him unfunny now. He used to mock people, not like in a really mean way, but in quite a gentle way, like with skits with the England football team. He took the piss out of a lot of them. And on panel shows, it was very much, he was a bit cheeky, that was his whole thing. It was like, you know, cheeky Essex boy, I think he's from Essex, cheeky Essex lad, you know, like that was his kind of whole vibe. He would be a little bit cheeky, a little bit irreverent, takes the piss a bit, and he could be quite amusing. But, like, watching him, and I don't watch his show a lot, I hardly watch his show, but I have seen clips, because it comes up on YouTube constantly of, like, this celebrity, that celebrity. I've seen some clips of his show, basically. And what I notice now is that he just seems to be quite simpering and falling over himself, and do I want to say slimy? I think I want to say slimy towards famous people. Like, it's just very simpering and he never used to be like, he was just quite irreverent in the past, and he's lost that kind of mocking, taking the piss in like a gentle way, but he's lost that now it's just like, it's no fun to watch someone be bowing down to all these like celebrities, like, oh my goodness, you know. Do you know what I mean? Am I getting kind of my point across? It's just, that's just how it comes across now, that he's now in the Hollywood Club, and now he's in the Hollywood Club, he doesn't mock the Hollywood Club anymore. Maybe very cringily, gently, in a very squeaky clean, scripted manner. Like I say, he was a kind of a bit irreverent and gently mocking towards either power or the establishment or celebrities, rather than simpering at their feet. You know, James Corden, he was always a little bit loud and grating, but what made him bearable was the irreverence and the genuine humour, and kind of taking the piss a bit.
Thomas Beattie announced he was going to have a baby, but what was unusual about the whole affair? Okay, what have you got? Dara?
We have that he was a man, that he was a pregnant male transsexual. That's what was new. It was him having the baby.
Okay, Sean, James?
We wrote it was an abomination.
He's so sanitised now, I think that's what I want to say.
I can't help but notice, Jim, that we've been given a cross for abomination.
He's so cheesy and squeaky clean and scripted and sanitised, and with just everything that made him funny is gone. Which there are some comedians who are like that and are funny, but that wasn't how he was funny. And so when you take that away, you're just left with the loudness. And he was a bit, how he used to be reminds me, although he was never as funny as Ricky Gervais, don't get me wrong, it was a little bit the same vibe of Ricky Gervais sometimes, like how his humour used to be, same vein. But everyone knows that's what makes Ricky Gervais funny, is that he's so irreverent. Nothing is sacred. Everything is up for taking the piss out of. I like that. I'm a big fan of Ricky Gervais, I think he's very funny. Point being, if Ricky Gervais lost his irreverence, he would lose literally the funny things about why he's a comedian, and yeah. It's kind of the same with James Corden, I think. So sure, James Corden was always a little bit loud and attention-seeking, but he was also often genuinely funny. He used to be able to act better somehow as well. He was less over the top. He was more underplayed and subtle in what he did. He overplays everything, and he just used to be just a little bit more chill. So my point being, I guess the reason I'm being so mean right now, and I know I'm being mean, don't get me wrong, about James Corden is because I don't think this is his genuine personality that I'm attacking, okay? I think I'm going after his persona right now, and I'll be honest, I don't like his persona. I don't know how I feel about James Corden as a person, because I don't know James Corden as a person. Who knows, he could be a lovely bloke, he could also be a total bastard, I've no idea, I don't know him. I think this whole persona that he's got now, I think it's some act that either he's been told to do or he thinks will work for American audiences, because it's quite very different to how he used to be when he worked in the UK. And, like, I don't know, he's clearly, like, I know I see lots of people online, Americans included, who also find James Corden very annoying and complain about him. So I don't understand, it seems that, do most Americans then like him? Because somehow he's been pushed to massive international success by his whole thing that he does now. So clearly it kind of worked, but I don't understand why. But really, if we're going to get right down to it, the worst thing that James Corden did that makes me very, very disappointed, I've got the word disappointed written down, very disappointed in you. You had to drag other British comedians down with you, because they also appeared in the new Cinderella movie. And it was very upsetting to witness. Rob Beckett, he was already a lost cause, don't really care about that, but Romesh Ranganathan and James Acaster, I expected better from you. I really did. I want you to think long and hard about what you've done, frankly, appearing in that abomination of a film. You've let comedy down, you've let Britain down, but most importantly, you've let yourselves down. Forget about what James is doing, we're not all doing what James is doing. James is bad, James is not funny anymore. Peer pressure, you let your friends drag you down with him. So I just want to take a minute to personally address Romesh Ranganathan, because he used to be one of my favourite comedians a few years ago. He's become... I don't find a lot of stuff on the BBC funny anymore. I don't watch the BBC anymore, to be honest. I find it really not funny now. And Romesh Ranganathan, I found him less and less funny as time's gone on. However, a few years ago, I used to find him really, really funny. And not he will ever see this, but to personally address Romesh Ranganathan. Romesh, I know that you know the movie is stupid. I know that. Truly and deeply from the bottom of my heart, 100%, I know that you know it's stupid. James seems to have lost all self-awareness at this point, so who knows whether he thinks the movie is good or not. He probably does. But I know you haven't. I know you're still self-aware, and I know, Romesh, when you did that stupid little clapping scene, I know you hated yourself just a little bit when you had to do that.
What even is that? We're just banging them together.
So, Cinderella's main obstacle in this movie is that women aren't allowed to own businesses, which is item 1 on my list of evidence for this movie not actually caring about feminism, but pretending to care about feminism just so everyone can tell James what a good person he is. It's the laziest explanation possible, just to say that women aren't allowed to trade, even in dresses, as for like a feminist obstacle to overcome. Honestly, it's just... And I'll tell you why. We know that this is a lazy explanation because it doesn't make sense. But the movie doesn't care as long as it suits their pseudo-feminist narrative. I don't know who doesn't know this, okay? But literally, for hundreds of years, this might shock some of you, for hundreds of years, women have made clothes. I don't think men have ever gone around telling women that they can't make pretty dresses because it's too manly? What are we saying here? Come on, James, sort yourself out. What is that? What's the message, right? I mean, seamstresses and dressmakers were mostly female, right? Women would have wanted to buy clothes from other women. I like how even the Cinderella movie knows this. Even the movie knows this because they never once show another dressmaker or seamstress because they know it would just completely contradict the whole message of the movie. That Cinderella somehow can't become a seamstress or a dressmaker or own her, but I guess the movie's going, oh no, it's not that. We framed it in the sense of her owning her own business, but it's just bullshit. Like if she wanted to do, she could do it. Like that. It's just stupid. I also, one other thing that kind of bugs me, I don't like the attitude of this movie towards women. and it's so feminist. It's not really. Or it's that new branch of feminism that I have quite a lot of problems with, that's just nonsensical. So this whole idea that women never added anything to society until the sexual revolution, it's so insulting to all women of the past, okay? I kind of get that vibe from the film. Like, sure, women have always had restrictions specific to their sex and had oppression specific to their sex. But the idea that they were so oppressed, they just lacked any agency, is honestly pretty sexist. Genuinely sexist, in my opinion. Women being involved in trade and running a business did happen before the 80s, okay? It wasn't something that would have been as shocking to people in the past as a lot of people now seem to think. There have been periods of history and time when it was banned for women to own a business. There have also been periods of history and time in places where it was not banned, even very far in the past, for women to own businesses.
To think that any girl, let alone you, would have the audacity to engage in matters of business, it's insane.
But regardless, whether it's banned or not, women have always been involved in business, okay? Sometimes they'd take over their husband's trade if he died, and sometimes they just ran their own thing, but all women didn't just sit at home until the 1970s. Why do people think that they did? Sure, some women did, but especially for poorer women, life was too hard for them to be able to do that. Everyone had to do work of one kind or another, and if they didn't have any men in the family to be the breadwinners, then they would have to do it. And guess what? A lot of women in the past were left without male family members to take care of them. Cinderella, in her family, the family that she's in, it would make more sense if there was a male figure in her family, actually. But again, there's more reason for why the setup of Cinderella doesn't make sense for the kind of story they want to tell. If it was just her and, let's say, loads of brothers and a stepfather, rather than a stepmother and stepsisters, it would make sense if they were all men in her family, and then that would make so much more sense as to why then she couldn't do what she wanted to do. But in this family, there are no men. There's no husband, he's dead. So, like, in that family, it would be pretty likely in that scenario that she and her stepmother and her stepsisters, if they've got no money, like they keep saying, they keep going on about, they would either have taken on the dead husband's trade or be trying something else to earn money. Like, sure, they could also just be holding out hope that one of them would marry well and, you know, if they've got enough cash to tide them over. But it's not unreasonable to think that they would be working in some way. I just, you know, even when a husband was alive, if he had a business, his wife would probably be helping him with it if she could, or daughters. I mean, sure, they wouldn't have owned it, but they'd have been involved, and people would have known they were involved. And I know it's a made-up world in this Cinderella movie, but the idea that Cinderella, this is what's wrong with me, the idea that Cinderella would have been laughed out of the marketplace, which she was, for trying to sell products just because she's a woman, is kind of stupid. Especially because the product is a freaking dress.
It's a beautiful dress.
Right? I should be allowed to sell it.
Sure, but women can't own shops.
Do people just think that women never sold anything until recent decades? It's just, that's why it's lazy. Or if you can do that, but then the movie needs to have a better explanation for it, rather than because you just like people in medieval times would go and like sell things and buy just in a marketplace. It's not that mind-blowing. And I know what you're thinking. It's stupid to go into this movie expecting historical accuracy. But historical accuracy isn't actually my point. My point is that it's lazy feminism that's just paying lip service to the idea of women's rights while actually not caring about that at all, and just using it so they can get woke points for their movie and sit around in a circle wanking each other off and talking about how they're all such virtuous people who are changing the world with their shit film.
Fairy tales are these kind of vehicles, especially for young people, of messages and lessons, and I feel like this movie is just this kind of modern retelling of it.
Great film for young boys and girls to watch when they're growing up.
And here's the other thing. Who is this movie for? Call me crazy, but I'm not sure there are loads of young girls sitting around thinking, wow, I wish I could work in the fashion industry. What a shame I'm a girl. Everyone knows girls can't work in fashion. Thank God James Corden came along and told young women everywhere that we too can sew pretty clothes. Wow, thank you so much for that, James. You're really pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. I'm so glad that we girls have you on our side. Feminism would never survive without you. And James did say in an interview at one point that this movie is apparently a quote-unquote necessary update for the modern world.
It's a necessary update, I feel like, for the values that we have now and the way that we want humanity to move forward.
It's a necessary update, and
Yeah.
you are a necessary Cinderella.
So I want to know who he's reaching with this shocking message of women finally being allowed to work in fashion. We've been kept out of the industry for too long, sisters. We really have. I mean, look, they could have gotten away with Cinderella struggling in a certain business if they hadn't chosen fucking dressmaking. If she wanted to be a steel worker, sure, I'll buy it. Then I'd understand her getting laughed out of a male-dominated industry. But no, she's got to make dresses because they're trying to appeal to an audience of young girls. So who cares if the message of the movie doesn't make sense, as long as it means they'll make more money because pretty dresses and young girls, you know, so... But I mean, it's just so bloody rude as well, frankly, for James, implying that you've made the first truly feminist Cinderella.
It's a modern take on a classic tale. For anyone who doesn't know, why is this Cinderella different and why should people watch it?
It's more than implied. He almost flat out stated it, heavily implied.
It has all of the tropes of Cinderella. It has all of the romance and the love, but the key ingredient that's different is she's not just looking for a man to make her own life. She wants to make her own life.
I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. Were the other Cinderellas not empowered enough for you? Did they make the wrong life decisions according to you, James? Did they? Were the other Cinderellas, were they bad feminists, James? Did they choose marrying a prince who also happened to be a man they were in love with over living a life of abuse and poverty? Was that decision a little bit pathetic in your opinion, James? Would you have made a stronger choice then, James? I'm so glad you're here to tell us ladies what it really means to be worthy of respect. Or, alternatively, new suggestion, why don't you get bent, you fucking arrogant, condescending, egotistical twat? It's just such an idiotic and arrogant implication, though. Fucking talking down on other, better movies. Movies you can tell that they've just copied elements of, while pretending that they came up with it, and then saying that they improved on what they actually just ripped off.
It's a necessary update.
Gross, James. Gross. Disgusting.
The key ingredient that's different is she's not just looking for a man.
Also, I just want to hop in here and add, because I don't think I properly emphasised it in the video, and I think it goes a long way to further explaining why this infuriated me so much. There is no way that they're not all aware, all the people working on this movie, including James Corden, are not aware of the 2015 Cinderella movie. Look, it's kind of probably would have made me less irate if the 2015 Cinderella movie didn't exist, but the fact that it feels like they are almost directly attacking the 2015 version, like throwing a lot of shade on it in a very like shady, underhand way, indirectly attacking it, because there's no way they're not aware of that movie. It was massively successful. Came out only a few years ago, and then to say so soon after that they've made the first feminist Cinderella, that's what's kind of insulting and annoying about it, because you could forgive them and say, oh, they've overlooked other Cinderella movies, you know, if that movie didn't exist. But that was so recent. But also, not just that, they've copied so many elements from that movie. I think particularly the aesthetics. I think you just look, when I was watching the movie, my immediate thought was they've tried to copy the costumes from the 2015 Cinderella and the whole look and the aesthetics and the colours of it, except it's like the B-Tech version. So they've kind of taken so much from this movie, kind of copied it. A movie that was really well produced, well written, well acted. A lot of things, you know, you can criticise a movie, you know, if you don't like it, that's fine. But a lot of things were good in the 2015 version of Cinderella. I thought Cinderella was a genuinely strong hero while still being feminine, and then they've got the absolute audacity to rip so much of it off, make a far worse movie only a few years later, and then publicly go around saying that they've made it's a necessary update to Cinderella. It's pretty much like a direct attack on that movie while heralding their own movie when theirs is a far inferior film, while also having ripped off elements of the 2015 version of Cinderella. And also insulting the character, acting as if, not directly saying, because they're not coming out and doing that. It's quite underhand and cowardly, I think, in my opinion. Maybe I'm misreading it, but I think it's fairly obvious. Like, throwing insults at the 2015 version of Cinderella and not being feminist enough, that she's too weak. So theirs is a far superior movie, don't you understand? Yeah, it might be shit in pretty much every other way, but don't you understand? Theirs is woke Cinderella. Theirs is better Cinderella. The pathetic, feminine, weak Cinderella that didn't own her own business, the 2015 version, rubbish. That's the insult. And it almost feels like a direct attack on that character because she wasn't girl bossing all around the place and she was more traditionally feminine, and that's kind of, I think, partly explains the anger, why I'm so irate and furious about it, because it's just like the audacity. They've been making feminist Cinderellas for decades. They honestly have. There's so many feminist Cinderella movies. And your movie, James, is actually anti-feminist, and I can prove it.
The climactical feminist moment of this movie is when the prince asks Cinderella to marry him at the ball, but he says she'd have to give up dressmaking, so she's heartbroken, but after a few seconds thought, chooses her career. And can I just say, the logic of this whole situation is the dumbest thing I think I've ever seen on screen.
You will live the rest of your life as royalty.
Royalty? What about my work? My dresses?
Well, that would most likely be frowned upon. Women have a very prescribed role in court, but I would make sure that you were dressed by the finest dressmakers in all the land.
I'm a dressmaker.
It makes no sense that she literally wouldn't be allowed to make her own clothes. Why would that be a rule as the queen? Seriously, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be a rule. She could literally, in her free time, do whatever the hell she wanted. She could have the finest fabrics and dictate her designs to seamstresses and dressmakers and even do it herself. You do know, back in the day, women who didn't make dresses still used to do that with dressmakers. Tell them exactly what kind of thing that they wanted. Like, hell, Cinderella, she could have had the dressmakers at her beck and call, invite them to the palace to make dresses and learn from them. She could learn from, like, the highest caliber of professionals. Marrying the prince is literally a business opportunity for the best paid internship you could ever get. And she also bitches about women not being allowed to own their own businesses. Like, honey, become queen and you can change that. Just nag your husband for however many years it takes until he changes the fucking law. He would be the king. I don't care what he's saying right now in that moment to you proposing. Of course, he can make it possible for you to make your own dresses if you wanted to do that. Why would he not be able to do that? There is no logical reason. Again, I believe if her passion was fucking race car driving, not that they didn't have race cars, but you know what I mean. If it was something traditionally masculine, I feel like if that's the message you're going for, you have to choose a traditionally masculine profession, otherwise it makes no sense as to why, even in a sexist society, the king wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, go and do your girl things, I don't care. Even if he was really sexist, which this prince is not, by the way, even if he was, if he loved her, and if it was a feminine pursuit, I don't know why he wouldn't just change the law to make her happy, even if he was sexist, because it's just like a feminist, it doesn't make any sense. Making dresses would not be frowned upon. Historically, also, this is the other stupid thing, historically it was the queen who set the fashion that was then adopted by the court and then wider society. If you want to get your designs out there, literally being queen is the best thing you could do, as well as learning. Whatever the queen wore, everyone else was then wearing it to gain favour. Like, it's the best business decision for you to marry, but they had to make a stupid feminist statement, so they made the one that made literally zero sense. It's like, it's the best thing for you to do on so many levels to marry him. Marrying him would 1, take you out of poverty, 2, give you your freedom, 3, present opportunities for you to develop your work and get it out to a wider audience, 4, give you opportunities to help others, and 5, oh yeah, you'd be marrying someone you love. Like, that's the dream. Everything is perfect. What's the issue here? I will tell you what the issue is, because I also know that. The movie just wanted a bullshit feminist narrative that's actually meaningless, so they can contrive some girl boss narrative so she can be like, damn, I'm independent, for no reason. So they can shove their lazy message of choose your career over a man down our throats.
If it's a choice, I choose me.
You don't have to choose. He's literally offering you both. You could do both. He will be the king, and if he loves you, he's not going to order you to stop making dresses if it makes you happy. That's stupid. It makes me so mad because it's just the most nonsensical, fake made-up law ever. And not deciding to marry him makes you just also look stupid. It makes you look stupid because you made the worst decision for what you want to achieve. It's dumb. It would also make more sense if her business was successful and she was like, no, I've got a thriving business, I'll choose that. But it's not. At this point, it's just like an art project she does in her basement. The only person who's actually bought one of her dresses is the prince, and he only bought it because he fancied her, not because it was good. And also it's stupid when she's like saying goodbye to him and they can't get married. They've hardly known each other, but they hold each other's faces for so long and they cry while dramatic music plays, and it's just funny how over the top it is because it's not tragic. You could just marry him, it's not tragic, so it just feels really stupid. It feels like 2 12-year-olds are breaking up because one of them is grounded or something. Like, it's that ridiculous. Like, guys, get over it. This is not an issue. It's just acting ridiculous about something that's not a problem. Plus, they also have no chemistry. So the other thing is, if you have more than one brain cell to rub together, you'll see that even if her leaving him for her career did make sense, which it doesn't, but even if it did make sense, the whole feminist message of this movie still falls apart, even under those circumstances. Ironically, 2021 Cinderella has no agency. Every good thing that comes her way is the result of another character's actions, and that is true, so she's actually one of the least feminist Cinderellas. Her big business break comes because the prince, 1, was her first ever customer and bought her dress not because he liked it, but because, as I said, he fancied her. 2, gave her free publicity because he got his sister to wear her dress at the ball. 3, introduced her to his rich and famous friends that led to her getting a job. And then, after all that, she has the audacity to dump him and be like, I don't need you, I'm a feminist, and doesn't realise the irony of that statement because he actually did everything for her, and then she got the cheek to be like, look at me doing it all by myself. I mean, So not only is she not empowered, but she's also a hypocrite because it literally was the prince that led to her success, but the movie is so unself-aware that it doesn't even realise how unfeminist it is while preaching about feminism, and that is why I hate it. Cinderella is the epitome of someone who's super ungrateful and thinks they're so oppressed, but is actually incredibly privileged and thinks she's done it all herself when she hasn't. So, if you've been around on my channel for a while, you will know I'm passionate about strong feminine heroes. Some people have accused me of hating butch women, more masculine women, career women, and non-feminine women, and those people haven't been listening to what I've been saying. If you're a woman who can bench press 3 men while on a business call, that is genuinely very impressive. I know I don't hate you or think you're any less of a woman. What I am saying though, is that a lot of women, dare I say the majority of women, are feminine in a lot of ways, while also being very strong. Okay? And I think women like that probably get annoyed when we're told all the time that if we're not martial arts experts who also choose a career over a family, then we're weak, mindless victims of the patriarchy. That doesn't mean that you can't have female characters who are martial arts experts and choose a career over a family. I'm not saying that. But can we stop going around updating every single traditionally feminine hero into one supposedly more palatable for modern audiences? That's where my problem comes from. Are we understanding this? No, I don't hate you if you're a butch woman, okay? I'm just saying I don't like this trend of sneering, I guess, at traditionally feminine characters. The 2015 version of Cinderella, I will say, that was the version before this monstrosity, the 2015 version I thought was genuinely empowering without having to make Cinderella a patronising #girl boss who don't need no man. I also have an issue with stories about girls who sit around doing nothing until a prince comes along and solves all their problems, but that's not what 2015 Cinderella did. Every day she fought to make her life better, never lost hope, dealt with abuse while still doing what she could for those around her, and what actually happened was that a prince came along and saw those qualities and thought, I'm gonna marry her. Point being, if she hadn't acted as a positive force in her own life, and that of those around her, she wouldn't have gotten her happy ending. So she wasn't just a passive character who was saved by a prince.
You have never been, and you never will be my mother.
I think there is strength in femininity too, and it often seems to be those who shout the loudest when it comes to feminism who are the most sexist in that regard. Okay, their opinion of women seems to be lower than the average person's in a lot of ways. In short, in conclusion, we did not need a girl boss Cinderella. It was very, very cringe. I'm sick of the constant preaching nowadays, truly sick of it. I'm sick of movies that tell me what to think about something. It seems to be happening a lot. Movies and TV shows. Good movies with truly deep messages often present something from various different perspectives, and when you leave the cinema, you actually leave thinking about those different perspectives and drawing your own conclusions about it. It's made you think about an issue, consider it, draw your own conclusions, think for yourself. The message isn't just stamped across it, so that when you leave the cinema, you leave, as another little automaton, taking the right message that the movie spoon-fed you, conveniently relieving you of the burden of actually thinking for yourself. It just gives you a ready-made opinion. Here's the opinion you should have. Here it is, right here, have the opinion. I don't like that. And I don't care what opinion it is. I would hate a preachy Christian movie portraying all people who get abortions as psychopaths, just as much as I would hate a preachy left-wing movie portraying all pro-life people as redneck misogynists. Okay? Don't give us ready-made opinions. Why don't you present a complex issue from other perspectives, all perspectives, and give it the time and care that it deserves, and trust people to come up with their own conclusions. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that movie makers can't have a personal opinion, but how about portraying a topic sensitively and realistically, not in a caricature, and still, while, you can still have a message, but still allowing people to consider something and fucking think for themselves, rather than this is the right and only opinion type of movie. Newsflash, that's not a movie, that's a propaganda piece, and propaganda pieces are not known for their good quality or creativity. So I really feel that culture now isn't about thinking anymore, it's just parroting back the same talking points, and we're seeing it in all the movies and TV shows, and it makes art stale and boring, and creativity, empathy, compassion and understanding is dead, where everyone's a self-righteous robot without a single original thought. And that's how I feel about Hollywood nowadays, to be quite honest. You get the odd gem, but a lot of TV and movies, can we not? Can we let people think about things for themselves rather than just giving them here's your, like, processed, ready-made opinion, don't need to do anything, just gobble down and don't think for yourself. Here's why I'm annoyed. Like, other Cinderella movies managed to be genuinely feminist without just stamping, this is how to think across the whole movie. And they still managed to be for kids as well. Like Ella Enchanted, I will say. I think the 2021 version tried to do what Ella Enchanted did. Ella Enchanted was a funny, cheeky, modern, yet fairy tale setting, except everything was just so much better and it genuinely had a way more empowered Ella. She had agency, she made the decisions, she progressed the plot forward, she changed the prince, she saved the kingdom, she had genuinely horrific obstacles to overcome, it had a great explanation for her obedience, and she didn't have to leave the guy she loved for no other reason than to make an empty feminist statement. And also it had a better cover of Somebody to Love.
Can anybody love somebody?
So no, James, to conclude, your movie isn't necessary, nor useful, nor important, or even good, frankly. I hope those sweet, sweet American dollars make up for all the respect you lost by dumbing down your humour and churning out shamelessly low-effort cash grabs while also grossly pretending it's deep and important and really having an impact on the culture. You made the first feminist Cinderella? Fuck off. That's an insult to all the Cinderella movies that came before you. You made the worst Cinderella. Sorry I haven't uploaded, guys. I was going to make a longer video talking about this, but honestly I don't really know what to say because I don't know anymore whether I will be making more YouTube videos or not. So there's not much point me doing a video explaining what's going on and what videos I'll be doing when I don't know. I feel that the world is kind of going to hell in a handbasket recently. And also just with my own life, I'm not quite sure what there's some changes happening, so it just depends on how things are going to happen. But also just apart from that, like, I know I said I was going to upload more frequently, but making videos about like Winx and the Gossip Girl reboot and bad TV shows and books and stuff just seems a bit pointless, you know, given the absolute state of the world right now. I'm actually stunned by how many people seem totally willing to give up all their freedoms to governments because they've never abused their power before. That could never go wrong. There's no historic precedence for that. So yeah, I don't care what justification politicians give it. I think a papers, please society is totally immoral, and that's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't trust these people with a fiver, never mind anything else. Your body isn't the property of the state, at least not yet, and it's none of my nor anyone else's business what somebody decides to do with theirs. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about, but apparently we're not allowed to talk about it on YouTube because we live in a free society with free and honest discussion about important topics. And that's just how I feel about that. So, you know, maybe I'll make more videos, maybe I won't. I have no idea where things are going and how I'll be feeling about it because I don't know where my life is going, what's happening, blah, blah, all the rest of it. You get the picture. And I seem to I do this thing where I keep writing scripts. I've got loads of scripts and then not making the videos. So I don't know really what's going on with that. There just seems to be far more important things going on, in my opinion, than fucking Winx. And I'm finding stuff like that a little difficult to focus on at the minute. It just feels very irrelevant to everything. I don't know, it just feels a bit pointless and stupid. Anyway, goodbye everyone. Make your own decisions, trust yourself, don't be bullied, and remember that you're still allowed to question anything you want, and anyone who says you can't is a petty tyrant and should maybe fuck off and be tyrannical somewhere else. Look after yourselves.